The Ebola epidemic, which broke out in 3 countries in West Africa in March 2014, was the most severe in the history of the continent. More than 28,000 people have been infected and nearly 11,300 are dead. 99% of these deaths occurred in Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia. Ebola has seriously affected people's livelihoods, the health sector and the economies of the region, leading to a humanitarian catastrophe and a threat to peace and security. The response to the epidemic was slow and difficult, and it failed because of weak health systems in countries affected in terms of equipment and preparation to cope with it. In addition, this was the first time West Africa had to deal with this health emergency. Added to this is the lack of coordination of the various regional and international institutions that were directly intervening in the fight against Ebola.
Ebola almost ravaged our country, especially in terms of livelihood. People were afraid to congregate even in the marketplace, so a lot of people depend on taking goods to the market where a large number of people are. And so the handling of food, people could not even eat in restaurants because they were not sure who was preparing the food and who was touching what, because of fear of acquiring the disease. And so it was a very serious issue for Liberia. As the death toll rose, people in the big communities like Kanta, where I come from, people were afraid of coming to the market. It was a ghost.
The impacts were huge. I mean, we not only lost about 11,300 lives in the region, the entire health system actually literally collapsed. In fact, the collateral costs of the outbreak was much higher. There were more people who died of other very easily treatable diseases like malaria, like very, very simple things which could easily be treated, could not be treated just because health centers were shutting down. And literally people were too scared to go to a public health center. Schools were closed for 10 months. And this is very, very tragic in a country which has already lost an entire generation of young people who did not get proper education.
The last known Ebola patient was declared cured officially on April 20th in southern Guinea. His recovery triggered the 42nd day countdown, twice the maximum incubation period of the virus, to proclaim again the end of the transmission of Ebola in the country and the region. Although health conditions appear to be stabilizing, the disease is not yet eradicated in these countries. A new study published in the medical journal of Infectious Diseases and conducted in Guinea and Sierra Leone shows that the Ebola virus persists in the sperm up to 12 months after recovery, a situation that calls for vigilance and increased monitoring of people who have been in contact with the virus.
Currently, there are watch facilities which have been set up during the Ebola response, but they have to be strengthened in terms of their operational capacities. And find the resources for their policies. In other words, they have to be supported financially to make sustainable the surveillance, the monitoring of people who are cured from Ebola.
Decentralization here means allowing the communities and the families to take ownership of the response by giving them the necessary information, accurate information. Don't just go about saying, don't do this, don't do that. Explain to them what they have to do and why they have to do it so that they can explain it to family members. They can take appropriate measures when someone is sick, how to treat the person, not just to abandon the person, but make sure the person can get to a health facility.
To strengthen the regional post-Ebola surveillance, members of civil society, NGOs and the governments of Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone and the Ivory Coast, the 4 member countries of the Mano River Union, recently gathered around a regional workshop in Freetown, Sierra Leone. The objective of this meeting: establish a project to support health surveillance and strengthen socio-economic recovery initiatives in West Africa.
Il est important
It is important for us to prepare not only to prevent Ebola disease to resurface and become out of control, but it is important and urgent for us to be ready for any medical, health or humanitarian emergency in the sub-region.
One thing that we have not really, we've learned, but we have not really acted upon is the reality that Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone are essentially one country, the same ethnic communities across the borders, the same porosity of borders. These people don't really see these national borders to be a constraint to their mobility across the chiefdoms, across the different ethnic geographies that they have. So that reality is there. And it would be foolhardy for us to continue to operate on a state level. The virus started from Guinea along the borders. In less than 3 months, it was in Liberia. In less than 6 months, it was in Sierra Leone.
This support project for the 4 countries, funded at an estimated $4.5 million by the Japanese government and coordinated with the support of UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, will allow the creation of an environment conducive to strengthening the resilience of regional, national, and local institutions to address shortcomings in the response of the epidemic.
How we can surveillance, outbreak of such deadly contagious diseases, and which is also helping to set community structures, but also local government structures to actually be able to surveillance these surveillance for any future outbreak of communicable disease, but at the same time also ensure that community livelihoods are built is very essential so that people can recover from the losses that they had. I think this can go a long way in restoring back the society and making societies more productive.
With these 4 countries, it's like a chain. If it starts again in Guinea, chances are that it will break out again in the sub-region. So this project will be more than timely in terms of early warning mechanism to set up, in terms of surveillance in these 3 countries, of medical support in case it is around, and this will help us anticipate just avoiding further damages. The first stage was a leap in the unknown, but now that people are aware of it and address the issue, they have a health plan to provide care to people so that when it is here again, the damages will be much less than what they used to be in the first stage.
The second component of the project will enable people to recover from economic losses caused by the outbreak. Support will be provided to local authorities, civil society and community organizations to promote entrepreneurial initiatives and microfinance conducive to economic and social development, especially for women and youth.
C'est surtout le niveau, on va dire, local des communautés que nous.
We were really struck by the local response of communities. In other words, the strengthening of local and cross-border communities. The assistance in terms of livelihood so these communities can be more resilient because they really felt left to themselves during the crisis. So the focus will be on assistance for community recovery.
Portera sur vraiment l'assistance au relèvement communautaire.
L'Ebola, c'est un problème de développement.
Ebola is a development issue, but also an issue of access to sanitation. So the first thing is psychological support, then the health plan, because an unhealthy body cannot go any further, and finally, on an economical level.
Là également, c'est très important, comme nous le savons, les femmes également prennent en charge leur foyer.
Here also, this is really important because, as we know, women are responsible for the household, at least at an important level. If they lost their jobs or revenues because of this crisis, or trade did not work well during border closing, here they will benefit from income-generating activities. The epidemic has also slowed progress in the framework of the Millennium Development Goals, reducing the ability of governments to collect taxes, to invest in social infrastructure and services and improve the lives of their citizens. For the different actors of the post-Ebola recovery, It is essential that the project contributes to an integrated development approach in the long term to promote a better articulation of interrelated issues of governance, security, resiliency and funding opportunities.
Actuellement, l'Afrique fait face à un certain nombre de défis.
Currently, Africa is facing several challenges. The challenge is inclusive growth. In other words, how to make sure that the majority benefits from this growth. This is one of the key issues this project seeks to address. The other challenge deals with structural economic transformation. In other words,
c'est-à-dire comment faire pour que les secteurs, les ressources soient réallouées.
How to do for the resources to be reallocated from high productivity sectors to low productivity sectors. The purpose is to create added value, and if you look carefully, this project tries, among other things, to enable people in cross-border areas who received less support in the Ebola response to access opportunities that will help them create added value through the value chains to make headways in terms of trade and economic integration. So this project is the beginning of an answer to these moves.
D'intégration économique. Donc, ce projet constitue déjà un début de réponse donc, à ces dynamiques-là.
So we've learned a lot of lessons from this, that if we are not able to put in place the buffers, the safeguards for vulnerable communities, and the safeguards for the larger economies of these countries, every time there is a little crisis, they will experience a reversal of their economies. And that would not serve us well in this new dispensation of sustainable development, which is Agenda 2030. If we have to achieve this, then we must make sure that the gains made in these economies are sustained.
Over a one-year period, the project certainly does not manage to address all the issues inherent in the post-Ebola recovery. In contrast, it should help better structure the response to the humanitarian crisis and lay the foundations for economic recovery mechanisms for affected countries.